Welcome back to Horror Movie Hat Trick. Jason, how you been?
Cheers, Biggers. I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. And we continue our monster movie madness for all of October. And this week we cover lichens or werewolves or wolfmen. I don't really know what the proper nomenclature is.
Hirsute individuals.
Hirsute individuals. Yeah, I don't know. I've never met one. I need to ask them what the preferred name is. It's like little person, dwarf. I
They're
don't
not
know.
little people.
I have no idea. So
You mean like small inside? Like me?
I think it's more like angry inside. So we'll talk about that in a little bit.
There is a sort of Jekyll and Hyde duality with werewolves, right? We were talking about this earlier.
Exactly.
Like what constitutes a werewolf, and I think it's sort of giving into the animalistic inside of us a release. But these movies sort of play it all different ways.
And also being, cool enough with yourself to not shave your back. I think that's a big one too. So Jason, tell us what we've won with these three movies this week.
It's hard to call it a winning week, but we have got 1970s The Fury of the Wolfman, starring no one you've ever heard of. Then we moved to 1986 Silver Bullet, starring Corey Haim and a pre-brain injury Gary Busey.
Yes.
And then we moved to 2010 Wolfman with Benicio del Toro and Anthony Hopkins. I think that was the last attempt to start a Universal Monsters universe. The last failed attempt, not the most recent failed attempt.
It was interesting, and a lot of great actors, a lot of big names. They put a lot of money into that movie.
They brought Rick Baker in to do special effects from American Werewolf London.
Yeah,
You've got Emily Blunt. You've got
Sir Anthony Hopkins.
Sir Anthony Hopkins, the guy from The Matrix. What's his name?
I don't know. We have Del Toro.
Del Toro. So a lot of talent in front of the camera and behind the camera, which is strange because the movie is pretty much forgotten.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that as our last film, but our first film this week
is up. You have the task of telling me what is going on in The Fury of the Wolfman. 50,000 words or less. What is this movie about?
When the heliotrope starts growing among rough rocks, and the full moon shines at night, in a certain area of the earth, a man turns into a wolf.
All right.
Because I am mystified.
So first, let me set the stage for you. This is a Spanish horror film, and currently there are a lot of really good Spanish horror films out there. I've seen, I believe, what's the one, Emily, or The Orphanage?
The Orphanage was great.
So there's a lot of, there's the, what is the Hunger, or where the
With
young...
David Bowie?
No, there's one about young veterinary students who are sisters and come out to be vampires. Very interesting film as well. So, in the long line of Spanish films, and much like the spaghetti western in the 1970s, it was much cheaper to produce films overseas. So, instead of westerns, people were producing horror films in Spain.
Are you suggesting this film does not have a big budget?
I would say this movie had a budget slightly higher than my high school film class. So,
I think this film had a budget slightly higher than our budget here today.
Exactly. It was interesting. So it's in this long line of these Spanish low-budget horror films. This is the fifth installment, and I believe this one is called the El Furioso de Hombre Lobo. So that was the original title, and it's an interesting film. It starts off right off the bat with a recap of what had gone on before, but they cut out, I believe, a few of the sequels. And this is where it goes off at the very beginning. He says that he was bitten by a
yeti.
By a yeti while he was hiking the was it the
Himalayas, maybe?
The Himalayas.
Mount Everest?
Yes, Mount Everest.
Yes.
That's exactly what it was. So he's hiking Mount Everest, gets bitten by a yeti, and then suddenly becomes a wolfman.
No, he thinks he's a wolfman.
I think he knows he's a wolfman.
It's really not clear, but continue, because I am fascinated. So far,
It's a
you've
layover.
already clarified some things for me.
And the thing I like is it opens with a layover of like a dream sequence. It's like this fever dream, and it's two different films laid over each other, so there's something going on in the background.
Unrecognizable.
And you can't tell what the fuck is going on. I needed to be on some shrooms or some peyote or something while watching this movie. The translations are amazing. They hired, I think, the cheapest person they could find to do the English translations, who was probably an Asian person who had just moved to America.
No, there was one New Yorker in that cast, or a guy doing a New York accent towards the end. Hey, you gotta go up to that castle and see what's going on. Where the fuck did this guy come from?
Again, I think it's an Asian person who moved to America. They moved to New York, and they did their best American accent.
You're still only 90 seconds into this movie as far as plot synopsis.
Yes, and so it's an extremely convoluted plot where a Wolfman essentially has both a wife and an ex-girlfriend, and the ex-girlfriend is extremely evil. She oozes evil, lives in a castle, throws weird orgy parties, also conducts experiments on innocent individuals in her basement. So a whole cast of things going on with this woman. Also, he has a wife. And so between the two of them, all hell breaks loose. So the wife ends up dying. Wolfman kills himself with a downed electrical line. And they both end up in the morgue of the crazy ex-girlfriend, who has one of my favorite lines, which is, "With the electrical waves, we will revive him." And there are all kinds of amazing, amazing lines in this film. I think Jason has a couple favorites. You have to have a favorite line in this movie, don't you?
Oh, yeah. A woman finds her dead son, just been mauled, and the cop shows up, and she's crying, looking over her dead son, and he says, "What did the attacker look like?" And she sobs a little bit. He throws his hands up immediately. "Useless!"
You've got to make an attempt. Tell us what you know. Who or what killed him? It's useless.
We found this piece of cloth in the victim's hand.
Hurry and let the bloodhound smell it.
Wow, buddy.
No pause.
Don't call the police in Mexico.
No pause whatsoever between any of the dialogue, by the way. All the dialogue is one after the other, completely on top of each other, much like these podcasts normally are. But this was actually scripted. We don't script this. This was a scripted film that people sat down and produced.
Okay, so this is like completely incoherent movie. You cannot follow this movie. So I take notes.
Okay?
And often in a movie, when I get lost, I'll pause it and go, okay, where were we? And maybe I'll look at some frames and go, okay, this. I paused the movie, I looked at the counter, it was 1 minute and 29 seconds, the first time I was confused in this movie. By the time we hit 20 minutes, I threw my notebook down. I said, I'm just gonna let this movie wash over me, because I'm paying more attention to this movie than the filmmakers. So if you've ever seen a porno from the 70s, there's a talking scene and there's a sex scene. This is like a porno from the 70s with just the sex scenes cut out, because it makes absolutely no sense. Our acting, the choppy editing.
Oh, that's one of my favorite things about this movie, is the editing. It was essentially a grab bag of clips. I think they just threw all the clips into a hat, they pulled them out at different intervals, and then pasted them together and somehow made a movie, which I kind of found enjoyable.
So, his ex-girlfriend who's in love with him, she's an evil scientist.
Yes, the evilest.
But she also has a day job at a hospital. And she has an apartment, and she has a roommate?
Ilona, who was that man wearing the rubber mask?
A sick man just like the rest of them.
Like the rest? Those drug people who live under your protection like animals?
I can make them human beings again, Karen. I can cure them, you see. They're my patients, and they trust me, all of them.
I don't know. At times I think that all of them, Walterman, Hetty, these wanderers, and even me, all of us are just guinea pigs for your experiments.
What are you saying, Karen? You know me very well. Do you think me capable of such a thing?
Yeah, you know,
Why does
the rents in Spain extremely high apparently at this time.
Look, there's a reason Dahmer didn't have a roommate. Loose lips taste like chicken.
Yes, I would say that it was not the
And everyone's
most
horny.
well thought out script.
Everyone's horny for the werewolf. Every single woman in this movie is in love with the werewolf and has some sort of super complicated backstory.
Well, I think it's because there's only 3 men in the entire town. I think there are a ton of women in this movie. There are like 3 male characters who show up. That's it. And so one guy gets pursued by multiple women. He is the Wolfman.
There's the insensitive cop.
The weakest Wolfman that you will ever see, by the way. He just kind of slowly meanders through things.
He just walks around super cool. He like literally takes it, holds a handrail, and takes his time going down the steps.
Kind of picks people, but he doesn't pick them up. He just moves them as they walk willingly.
But he acts like a
frame.
vampire. He bites them all on the neck.
But I will say the one redeeming quality about this Wolfman is he had motivation. So this Wolfman actually had some motivation. I was like, okay, he's getting some revenge. He's getting revenge throughout the film, picking some people.
For his wife cheating on him?
He kills the ex-girlfriend. Spoiler alert, by the way, in case you're thinking about renting this film. He takes his anger out on his captors. He takes his anger out on... So he doesn't just run amok throughout the town.
That's a reach, bro.
Doesn't just run amok throughout the town.
He's not running amok, he's daintily walking down the steps. And a guy shows up in his suit of armor. What fucking
The lichen community is made of all kinds, alright? There are aggressive lichens. There are your dandy lichens, you know?
It sort of reminded me of Beneath the Planet of the Apes, where it becomes like a totally separate movie at a certain point. So once the Wolfman dies 20 minutes in, and all of a sudden it's the evil scientist plot, brainwashing. She can brainwash servants. She does all these things, but she still needs that sweet, sweet roommate money.
She has a secret potion that she can inject into people. They fall under her spell. She injects the Wolfman, tries to get him to do what she wants, but love conquers. There's that duality of man, right? The man overcomes the beast within to reject the beast and kill
His wife a second
master.
time. He
Yeah.
kills his wife twice.
Well, he has to kill his wife. She's now a wolf. She's now a wolf person.
I just want to say,
person?
marital infidelity is not something that deserves murder. I think you call a lawyer.
So, I think I know where you're going with this film. You didn't sound like a big fan.
I think this is a movie that if I saw it in a bar on a screen with the sound turned off, I would say, oh, I really want to revisit this. This looks kooky as fuck. It is incomprehensible nonsense. It is just a bunch of clips randomly strung together that don't really work in any fashion.
I kind of agree, but I did enjoy the film, I will say. It's very short. I want to say it's about 80-something minutes. But those 80 minutes feel like about 3 hours. So
I will say, you can always tell when they're about to do a stunt because there's a piece of the set that wobbles and then he pushes a person through that piece.
And I'll also say that this is actually an homage to editing, because this movie is so poorly edited.
There's an editor on here?
It makes you appreciate good editing that much more.
Hello. William, it took you long enough. Just be patient. Karen's with the professor. I'll go along with you.
All right, so Jason, I think I know where you're going with this film, but tell me, would you recommend The Fury of the Wolfman?
Absolutely not. Not with the sound on, not when you're sober, not when you care about a viewing experience. If you're at a bar and it's playing behind on a screen with the sound off, you may think it's an interesting movie. That's a good place to leave it. If you're having a Halloween party and you need something in the background to distract people, it may seem like a fascinating movie, but it is an incomprehensible clip show mess.
I thought if you were on shrooms, it would have been a great film.
Yeah, let's redo it.
So I wouldn't recommend it, but I didn't hate the film. I think if you're looking for kind of a slice of that genre, 1970s Spanish horror films, go for it. Why not?
Mi mal, no es bueno.
All right, so for our next film, we've got Silver Bullet.
Silver Bullet.
Tell us what Silver Bullet is all about, Jason.
Silver Bullet is a 1986 movie that takes place in 1976. And reminisces about the time when Marty, a paraplegic Corey Haim, liked to torment his sister and hang out with his very drunk and irresponsible Uncle Red.
Rad Uncle Red.
Yeah. I have a sneaking suspicion that in real life, I'm Uncle Red. But Red, of course, being a cool, responsible uncle, makes this kid a mechanical wheelchair that goes 80 miles an hour on the road.
Namesake of the movie.
without a helmet, the silver bullet, gives the kid fireworks, illegal fireworks, to blow his fingers off.
This guy sounds awesome.
He doesn't have enough fucking problems being in a wheelchair. But of course, there's a werewolf tormenting the town, chewing up his neighbors, and Corey Haim, Marty, shoots a fire rocket into the werewolf's eye.
Well, and we don't know that it's a werewolf at this point, right? Like, so
it could be a teddy bear, and I've seen the ending of the movie. It still might be a fucking teddy bear.
It's not the best looking werewolf, but originally we don't know who's tormenting the town and killing his people.
At this point, by the time Marty shoots an eye out, you know it's a werewolf. So he teams up with his sister, who he's had a rough relationship with. They track down the only townsperson missing an eyeball now, and it's Big Ed.
And his sister, actually, who is the one narrating the film, looking back very...
Reminiscing on 10 years prior.
Yes, 10 years prior. So she's 12 in the film.
No, he's got to be 14, 15 in the film.
No way.
In real life, he's 15.
In real life, I think he was supposed to be like 10 in the film. She was supposed to be like 12 or 14.
No, she's not high school.
Okay, 14, 15. It's 10 years later. She's 25.
Yeah, she's not an adult. She should not be looking back on the great golden years of 10 years ago.
In the narration, she sounds like a 40-something-year-old woman.
Also, in the narration, it sounds like Corey Haim's character is now deceased. Because she says, and I always loved him. She's talking about him in the past tense. But he survives this movie, which leads you to believe that he died of some unrelated non-werewolf injuries between 14 and 24.
Maybe this was a device in the film to make
Maybe he read the reviews and fucking killed him.
Maybe this was a device in the film and they wanted to make you think that he could possibly die in this movie.
Anyway, so him and his sister and his drunk uncle, they team up, they make a silver bullet from the title, and eventually they conquer the evil stuffed teddy bear werewolf villain. Now, at this age, in '86, I was aware of this movie because I was a fan of the source material. Stephen King, when you were a child in the 80s, you read a lot of Stephen King. But this novel in particular had illustrations from Bernie Wrightson, one of my favorite comic book illustrators to this date. He's just a great, great, great horror illustrator. He's sadly passed on. So I was excited about this movie. What I got was not quite the book. The book takes place over the span of a year, the cycle of the werewolf. Every full moon, the werewolf claims a victim. It's a short book. Okay. The movie sort of condenses everything and comes up with some nonsense about how this werewolf can turn into a werewolf.
It's like a 2-week period where somewhere...
I think it's more than 2 weeks, but it's not that much longer.
All of a sudden, this Wolfman comes out and starts just running amok through the town over this very short period of time. Right. No explanation why all of a sudden the priest has these tendencies. No explanation.
It's never explained.
Yeah, why this is like suddenly...
What you do get is some classic 1980s Stephen King dialogue.
I loved it. Loved it.
I gotta jump to my favorite scene. Early in the movie, the young sister, whose name I forgot, she spies a couple arguing. This woman has pulled her man, her paramour, into the bushes to talk about her unplanned pregnancy. And he may be married, we don't know what's going on with him, but in the span of 5 seconds, he lays like the most insulting dialogue you could ever lay on a woman in this movie.
It's a long line of Stephen King drunken asshole guys. Like yes. Stephen King has a real thing, which is interesting because Stephen King himself is an alcoholic.
Right.
And he writes a lot of alcoholic douchebag dudes into his stories.
So in this one scene, he's like, I'm not the father of your baby. That may be your oven, but that ain't my bun. Hey, let's remember the good times. And walks away, leaving a crying pregnant woman alone in the bushes. By the way, guys, not cool.
And much more reminiscent of a 1950s film, which is what Stephen King films are kind of traditionally like 1950s, maybe 1960s.
Greasers, always greasers.
Always greasers. Suddenly we're in like the mid-1970s and he's writing some characters who seem like they're more fitting into the 1950s.
He does certain things, Uncle Stevie does certain things very, very well.
Yeah, this is, after one's lived, like this woman, there are available abortions, there is birth control.
Whoa, coming in hot. Coming in hot for the horror podcast.
There are all kinds of solutions here.
We're going to be defunded by Congress by the end of this.
But she breaks down into this,
she's depressed,
shattering mess.
And I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is, so she's one of the early victims, and she lives in a boarding house, it looks like, with an old woman who's got a shotgun in a drawer. She can't remember where it is. So she's all like, I am pregnant and I'm single, and that's a horrible position to be in. but she decides to kill herself. Tragic. And she pours out all these pills, and she's taking them one at a time. And the werewolf attacks her. And later the werewolf says, well, I killed her because she was going to kill herself, and that's a sin. A very judgy werewolf. My point is, how the fuck does that werewolf know that she's going to kill herself? It looks like she's just taking candy corn.
The priest/werewolf was just, walking through town, seeing what's going on, checking up on his flock. He's both a wolf and a priest. I love the flock. Anyways, so he's walking around, sees her taking these pills, says, I'm going to save your soul. I'm going to murder you.
She's on the second story. He's not watching. He was up there to kill her beforehand.
Possibly.
He may have overheard it with his canine hearing that she has an unplanned pregnancy.
Who knows?
The victims are chosen sort of willy-nilly.
Getting to the Wolfman on the roof, they made a conscious decision. In our different Wolfmen here tonight, we see their decisions about how to clothe the Wolfman. In this one, the Wolfman is nude. Back in the days, the very first Broadway show that I saw was Into the Woods.
We get it. You're a sophisticate. He sees Broadway plays. Oh, the very first of many that I saw.
Very first one I ever saw. And the Wolfman in that one he comes out, giant dong on the Wolfman. No
That's
clothes,
art. You can be arty in New York City. Well, plays in New York City. He's not going to play in Des Moines.
You guys want to see some dong,
No, the Wolfman has no nards in this movie. It's all covered up.
It was an interesting choice because the Wolfman wears no clothes, and so
that's an interesting observation.
We see that the Wolfman's kind of hunched over in a lot of the scenes, shadowed, and the actor who plays
for a
the
very
Wolfman,
good reason. The wolf looks like shit in this movie. He looks like a fucking teddy bear.
And it's also, he looks like shit and he's nude. And the man who plays the Wolfman,
you're obsessed with wolf nudity.
Not a very large dude. So it looks like a very skinny Wolfman. And at one point he breaks through a wall. I think
Kool-Aid Man style. There's two giant windows. You're going to jump through one of them. It subverts expectations. He breaks through a wall, and you see him in all his glory, and oh no. He looks terrible. He's laughably bad. And you understand now why they hate him the whole movie.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah.
And you look at this little slight man who is busted through a wall. You're like, wait, this guy weighs like 160 pounds.
Yeah,
How the fuck did he just break through a wall?
Big Ed skipped leg day. He does not look too good in this movie.
Yeah, so interesting film. It really is. It touches on nostalgia, my childhood. I watched this movie a ton of times on UHF. Back in the days when you could watch crappy horror films on a substandard form of broadcast television. UHF movies. This was one that they repeated all the time, especially during the Halloween era. I enjoyed it. It's really hard for me these days to watch a Corey Haim or Corey Feldman movie and really not bring up like the ideas of like abuse and the art,
what happens to
artists
them later can affect what you see back then.
Yeah, and I'm watching it like thinking like, ooh, was he abused at this point? And a sane Gary Busey. I really appreciate
a pre-brain damaged Gary Busey. Let me talk about Gary Busey for a second. Gary Busey makes his nephew a rocket chair that goes 80 miles an hour. He's passing cars on the road.
It's got like a two-stroke 250. This thing's hauling ass down the freeway.
Does not give the kid a helmet. Now, in real life, at this time, Gary Busey was a motorcycle enthusiast, and he was an opponent, a strong opponent, against wearing a helmet.
Also at this time,
helmet laws.
1986. I was riding the back of my dad's truck, 1985 Chevy, right down the freeway with my stepsister at like 60, 70 miles an hour.
Yeah, so it was the era of irresponsible parents, and irresponsible Gary Busey. So Gary Busey, of course, sends his kid off without a helmet. And I'm like, that's so Busey.
Uncle Rad.
Uncle Red, still Uncle Busey. In 1988, 2 years after this movie, Gary Busey was involved in a serious motorcycle accident where he was not wearing a helmet, and his head bounced off the curb, and he had brain damage since.
December 4th last year, I hit the concrete going 45 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm. On your bike?
On my motorcycle.
Yeah, you weren't jogging.
I wasn't jogging.
Yeah.
I hit a little bit of sand and gravel and went fishtailing, hit my rear brake, and I smashed into the concrete, and I don't remember 7 weeks of my life, and I was in the hospital for 2 months, and they opened me up from here to here and split my skull and scraped the temporal side of my brain, drilled 2 holes here, and I had blood shooting out this far.
Jeez, it's a shame you didn't bring any photos, Gary.
So he, after that, became an advocate for wearing a helmet.
Once
and I
again-
bet if Gary Busey could go back to 1986, he'd put a helmet on that little fucking kid. Because that was seriously irresponsible.
Once again, Jason bringing the levity and
The true world facts.
The true world
I want to put it in
stories.
context. Motherfuckers, wear a helmet no matter what you do. Skateboards, bicycles,
The depressing facts. Last
of
week,
Gary Busey.
last week it was Sharon Tate. This week it's Gary Busey. Next week we'll see what Jason brings us.
Yeah.
So Jason, what did you think of Silver Bullet?
It's boring, man. It's a kid movie. It doesn't have a lot of tooth. If I can shove a pun in here. Yeah, sorry, man. You want to talk about wolf dung? This is what I'm gonna do. It's really
Doesn't
light.
really bring the wood. Doesn't really. Wasn't.
It's light.
It's going too deep for you.
No, it's easily forgettable. I don't know. I'd skip it. There's nothing to it really.
I dug it. It really is reminiscent of my childhood. I like the practical effects. I don't think there are any special effects in this movie.
The practical effects are garbage.
There are no special effects. There's a scene in the woods with just like 5 dozen fog machines where we have.
There is one good scene in this movie.
If
It's
you've
a
seen-
fucking dream sequence.
If you've seen Reservoir Dogs, then
Lawrence Tierney.
one of my favorite actors from Reservoir Dogs, hanging out there with a baseball bat, swinging
Yeah.
away things in the mist. I like the movie. I recommend it, but we'll get to
It's
that.
forgettable. I think you have a lot more forgiveness for those 80s The Gate kid-friendly horror movies.
I do.
Even as a kid, this didn't have enough for me.
They tug at my black heartstrings.
All right, what's up next is 2010 Wolfman with
Yes.
Benicio del Toro, Anthony Hopkins,
Sir
Emily
Anthony
Blunt,
Hopkins.
Sir Anthony Hopkins. The villain for The Matrix is in here.
Indeed. And this is, I would say, Sir Anthony Hopkins' finest performance. No, probably not, but it's still a fun movie. So, Benicio del Toro leaves home after seeing his mother murdered, becomes an actor in New York, and then returns home to London after finding out that his brother has gone missing, returns home to find out his brother's dead. And then wackiness, no, actually no.
And he does what
wackiness
everyone
ensues.
would do if their brother dies. Try and bang your brother's wife.
Not right away.
No, because he's a romantic.
He's a performer, shows up to another band of performers who are coming through town. They have a dancing bear. People are very annoyed at this dancing bear. This is probably the bear.
The gypsies have a dancing bear.
This is the bear that has probably killed people in town. No, not really. The wolf shows up and starts murdering people at a very fast pace. There's an evisceration. This wolf.
This movie,
runs
Fast
around.
Pace, is not a movie anyone describes.
No. But in this one scene, this wolf moves at lightning speed. This is the Flash. This is the Flash of the Lycan / Wolfmen / It goes around this thing and murders dozens of people within like 30 or 60 seconds. It kills a shit ton of people.
We don't hear. We come for the bear now. It done all the killing. For goodness sake. He's harmless. What happened? It's the devil! The devil!
And you're right, it really isn't a movie that anyone would call fast-paced. It's very slow-paced for the first 20 or 30 minutes. It's a lot of setup of relationships. Yeah, a lot of relationships, a lot of, father, son, prodigal son. They bring that up multiple times.
Hammer that line down.
Oh, a fatted calf. I'm not going to give you a fatted calf, my brother. A lot of biblical references. And
in case you didn't get it, werewolves.
it's about an hour into this thing.
It's 1 hour until Benicio turns into a fucking werewolf in this movie.
But the change is really awesome.
The change is awesome. The movie picks up that.
You moron. Tonight I will kill all of you. I will kill all of you!
Yes, well, as you can see, lycanthropy
Please do something about it!
disease of the mind, existing
Kill me.
somewhere in the deep
Kill me.
recesses of the spirit. To him, it seems very real. The subject has gone both and physical sensitizing in all.
The practical effects, the special effects, the CGI in this film, I think it all worked really well together, really well edited, really a great look to this. The the director of this film also directed The Rocketeer and a few other...
One of the directors of this film.
Jurassic
did a great
3.
job.
So a lot of that kind of fun 90s look to it. It's kind of that we're just getting to the edges of CGI and what we can do, and there's still a lot of practical effects.
Rick Baker was still involved in the special effects. He did the special effects for American World London.
Yeah, so a lot of practical effects mixed with that CGI. So it had a great look and feel to it. I really enjoyed it. Atmospheric, I would say. It kind
You
of
have to rely on the atmosphere because the story isn't really that interesting.
No, it's they could have played up the father and son and the duality between the two, where one is really struggling to be good and one has really embraced the bad. I think they could have played that up. Spoiler alerts, by the way, Anthony Hopkins is a werewolf too.
Which is no surprise because he's telegraphing evil from the first scene, and you're like, this has to be a red herring. But there's no one else it could be.
Much like our first movie, I saw a lot of parallels in this movie.
It's nothing like that first shitty
I saw
movie.
a lot of parallels. Super evil, and there's really no mystery here who the super evil person is.
Okay, the first
Try to
movie was
cloak it in
incomprehensible. The mystery was, what is the movie?
The other thing was, this ties in the fact that a wolfman has to be killed by someone he loves, or who loves him, or her, or wolf person, whatever you want to call them.
It's so arbitrary. So if I shoot him with a silver bullet, it won't work because we're just
wouldn't
friends?
work. You have to love the individual that you are shooting with a silver bullet.
Oh boy.
And
Anytime you bring love into these unquantifiable fucking things into these movies, I can't stand it.
This from the guy who doesn't think vampires can reproduce because for some reason he read it somewhere.
They don't age. You don't age when you're a vampire. You have to age 9 fucking months to give birth.
What does that have to do with your sperm? I don't get it. Anyhow.
You are the undead. There is a trade-off to your soul to be immortal.
Well, this week we're talking
God
about
damn
Wolfmen.
it, guys.
This week we're talking about Wolfmen, who also really have no motivation. I can appreciate...
Do you have a theory about his dick? That's what you want to talk about. It's a wolf dick.
I can appreciate...
Where do you land on Benicio's wolf dick? Intact? Not? What's going on?
He wears the classic Wolfman costume of kind of a plaid-looking shirt, torn jeans or pants. Looks very classic Wolfman by the title, The Wolfman. I really appreciated that. But it's very interesting, the choices that people make in these different characters. We have the vampires who very clearly have to survive. They have to eat, they have to feed. There are, we have vampires.
A great vampire lawyer.
Vampires who try to resist the urge to survive and eat and whatnot. We have this, so there's clear motivation of why they do the evil things they do. We have Frankenstein, who just is misunderstood. He just wants to be loved and be human. Makes friends with a young lady, a young girl.
Who he drowns, promptly drowns.
It's a complete misunderstanding, though, right? So we get that, but the Wolfman just runs amok willy-nilly.
Wolfman is the representation of your animalistic side, your id that you cannot control.
But even
right? I am
animalistic
2
side.
drinks away from you seeing my animal side. So it's like this Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing, right? You have to have a sympathetic human character who wants to be in control and be good, and then his alter ego side that comes out during a full moon when he loses control, which is probably my biggest problem with this movie. I like Benicio del Toro. I think he's a fine actor. He's a strange choice to play a sympathetic character.
He's also a strange choice to play someone with an American accent because
Is that an American accent?
It is the most obvious fake American accent where everyone else is doing British accents, even an American who's doing a British accent. And so
he's not of the same piece as everything
it is
that's going
distractingly bad.
Forgive me, but we can't hear you.
You moron. Tonight I will kill all of you. I will kill all of you!
But he always is. But normally that works to his benefit, right?
Yeah.
And The Usual Suspects, like you don't know what accent he's doing, right?
Love it.
And this one, I don't know why he's in this movie. He's a good actor, but as a sympathetic character, as a romantic lead, as a guy, what he does bring is a flavor of Oliver Reed, who was in Curse of the Wolfman, the 1961 Hammer movie, which I love. He looks just like him.
The full moon that turned an innocent man into a savage beast. The curse of the werewolf.
And Benicio's not bad, but I will say the first time we see him, he's an actor in this movie. The first time we see him, he's on stage doing Hamlet. And he's doing Hamlet terribly.
Yes.
He is doing a ghastly Hamlet. So I have to ask myself at the very beginning, top of the movie, is Benicio playing a bad actor? Is Lawrence Talbot a bad actor in this movie world, or is Benicio del Toro not right for this role?
My theory on this is that he was trying so hard at this American accent that it just fucks up all acting skill that he has ever had.
It was high school level bad Hamlet. It was not good. So when this film was first announced, I think like 2006, 2007, I was super excited about a Benicio del Toro Wolfman movie. And then the production or the release date moved 5 times.
Always a sign of a quality film.
Yeah, it's not. So when it came out, I don't even remember it coming out. So I'm glad we got to revisit it. But I will say this. Usually when a movie has been reshot and switched hands and directors, you get a really, you can feel it in the final film. Like when we saw The Predator in theaters, it's a clusterfuck.
That completely, you can't tell what the fuck's going on.
Right.
It's a completely unintelligible film.
But this movie is actually pretty linear and easy to follow. You don't feel the reshoots and the re-editing, only in one spot, and that's Anthony Hopkins' hair changes halfway through the movie. He's got a different haircut. But aside from that, you don't feel the choppiness, you don't feel that production problems. So actually, it feels like a pretty coherent movie. It's not a bad movie at all. It does not deserve the reputation or the fate that it got, which was a huge bomb.
I looked it up on Rotten Tomatoes before we watched this, and I saw like a 30-something% score, and I was like, oh man, this is going to be really rough. But in fact,
it's not.
I enjoyed it. Once it got to the evisceration scene, it was like about 30 or 40 minutes in, there was this, evisceration scene. After that, great, sped right up.
The first half is a little bit of a slog. But once the werewolf starts going, it's a fun movie, and I think that that 30% on Rotten Tomatoes is just everyone knew that it had such production troubles that it was easy to dismiss and write off. But it's not as bad as they would have you believe.
Yeah. So Jason, how would you rank these movies?
I actually quite enjoyed Wolfman in 2010. I feel like Benicio del Toro, not an ideal choice, but not bad. He didn't embarrass himself too bad. So I would do that one pretty high. Silver Bullet's a steep drop. I don't really like that soft shoe 80s kid horror. And then the Mexican clip show that you call a movie is a fucking disaster. I would skip that. So
I'm in line with you, but I don't think there's such a steep drop off. I would actually go just for the nostalgia factor. For nostalgia, I would go Silver Bullet #1. I really, I love a sane Gary Busey. I love a young Corey Haim before he got into the drugs. And, just a great Stephen King film from the 1980s. It really warms the cockles of my heart. And so I will say that after that, I don't think it's a steep drop off. I think it's very close. 2010s, Benicio del Toro and Sir Anthony Hopkins in The Wolfman. Very reminiscent of classic Wolfman films. Running around, running amok. And
very reminiscent of Crimson Peak.
Yeah.
It would be a similar double feature to Crimson Peak. Very atmospheric, light on story and suspense and drama.
Very much. Leans heavily on the aesthetic of the film.
Yes. It's okay.
And the last one, I think, that's probably where a steep drop off occurs. And yes, no es bueno, as Jason said. It's a rough one, but it's still fun. If you want to throw something on in the background, lots of fun visuals.
If you like USA Up All Night, if you revel in bad movie decisions, that's a movie for you.
Throw it on there. Let your friends, kind of laugh the hilarity of the Wolfman.
Or try and follow it.
Yeah, figure out if anyone can understand what the fuck is going on in this film. If you can, please comment.
Let us know.
Let us know what the hell is going on in this movie. All right,
done?
I think that takes us to our 3 films. So we covered Wolfman this week. I think in the future, next week, let's go ahead and cover Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
Let's go with the Frankenstein.
Let's do it.
Classic horror. monster to continue our movie monster madness.
Halloween explosion extravaganza. This is where confetti drops from the ceiling. Woo!
Yes,
Monsters! October Monsters!
October Monster Fest. Hope you enjoyed it. Please comment and let us know what you thought.